I never thought I'd find myself in a situation that sounded straight out of a bad soap opera, but here I am, sharing my story in the hopes that it might resonate with someone else. My name is Kevin, and I've been married to Melissa for over 10 years. We have two beautiful children, a son, Ethan, and a daughter, Lily. Life had been fairly normal, filled with the usual ups and downs of parenthood, work, and the occasional date night. But recently, things seemed off, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It all started a few months ago during the spring semester parent-teacher conferences at Lily's school. Melissa seemed unusually preoccupied and distant. She was checking her phone more than usual, and often when I asked her what was on her mind, she'd brush me off with a vague excuse about work or being tired. I noticed she was spending more time getting ready in the mornings, and there was this odd perfume that I didn't recognize. I initially chalked it up to her wanting to look nice for the conferences, but a nagging feeling tugged at me. The day of the conferences arrived, and I was excited to hear how Lily was doing in school. Little did I know that this day would change everything. Melissa had insisted on going alone, claiming I'd be busy with work, but I didn't buy it. I had taken the day off just to support her. As I approached the school, I saw her in the lobby, deep in conversation with the principal, Mr. Thompson. I remember thinking it was odd how animated she looked, almost flirtatious. I shook it off at the time, thinking I was just being paranoid. Days passed, and I couldn't shake the image of them together from my mind. I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right, so I started paying closer attention. Melissa was suddenly more secretive, her phone seemed glued to her hand, and she would occasionally step out to take calls. When I asked her who she was talking to, she would give me a vague answer like, "Just a friend." The red flags were piling up, but I didn't have concrete proof, and I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then one day, while picking up Lily from school, I ran into Mrs. Harris, Lily's teacher. She looked hesitant at first, but then she leaned in and whispered, "Kevin, I need to talk to you about something." My heart raced as she explained that she had seen Melissa and Mr. Thompson together during the conferences. They were too close, laughing intimately. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Mrs. Harris said she didn't want to believe what she saw, but as a teacher, she felt responsible to tell me. In that moment, everything changed. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: shock, anger, betrayal. I couldn't believe that the woman I had built my life with, who I thought I knew inside and out, could betray me like that. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew I had to confront her. I went home, heart racing and my mind swirling with confusion. The house was quiet. I found Melissa in the kitchen, humming to herself while prepping dinner. She looked so blissful, so unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. I confronted her, my voice shaking. "Melissa, we need to talk about Mr. Thompson." The color drained from her face, and just like that I knew. She started backpedaling, claiming it was all innocent. "Kevin, you're being ridiculous. He's just the principal. We were discussing school matters." But it was too late. The doubt had taken root in my heart, and I wasn't buying her excuses anymore. As she tried to explain, I felt my anger boil over. I demanded the truth, and that's when the floodgates opened. She didn't confess right away, but her body language told me everything. It was a mixture of guilt and defiance, and it was tearing me apart. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake her and demand answers, but I also felt a strange sense of sadness wash over me. I had given her everything: my trust, my love, my life, and she had shattered it all in a moment of weakness. The conversation spiraled into a chaotic whirlwind of accusations, denials, and tears. I felt like I was losing not just my wife, but the very foundation of my life. As the day wore on, I was left with a heart full of despair and a mind racing with thoughts of revenge. How could I let this slide? The betrayal was raw, and I soon realized I needed to take control of the narrative. I couldn't just stand there and let her get away with it. The emotional upheaval I experienced was overwhelming. Suddenly, my world was turned upside down, and I could feel the heavy weight of disappointment settling in my chest. But rather than wallowing in sadness, I resolved to take action. I had a plan, and it was time to execute it. My journey from this point would be about regaining control, finding my own strength, and figuring out how to move forward in a new reality. I didn't know where it would lead, but I was determined to confront the truth head-on and take steps toward a resolution, whatever that might be. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Melissa, I felt like I was walking through a fog. I had just unearthed a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with scenarios I couldn't shake off. How long had this been going on? Was it just Mr. Thompson, or were there others? The questions gnawed at me, and every time I closed my eyes I was met with images of her and him laughing together, an intimacy I once thought was reserved for our family. The next day I held it together for the kids. Ethan and Lily were blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing just beneath the surface of our seemingly normal life. I put on a brave face, forcing smiles during breakfast and engaging in their silly banter. But inside, I felt like a volcano, ready to erupt at any moment. I decided to gather evidence. I knew I couldn't confront her again without concrete proof to back up my suspicions. I started tracking her movements, which felt invasive and wrong, but I was desperate to know the truth. I began to notice the patterns: late nights at work, sudden errands that would take her away for hours, and the constant phone calls. The way she would quickly hide her phone when I entered the room was a glaring sign. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I grabbed her phone while she was in the shower. The moment felt like I was crossing a moral line, but I needed answers. I unlocked it with her birthday, a combination I had always known, and began to browse through her messages. My heart raced with every scroll, and soon enough I found it. Texts between her and Mr. Thompson that were far too flirty and suggestive to be innocent. They discussed secret meetings, and I felt my heart drop as I read her laughing emoji responses to his risque jokes. My stomach twisted into knots. As the reality of her betrayal set in, a surge of anger coursed through me. I felt empowered and enraged at the same time. I had to act, but I needed to be smart about it. I couldn't let my emotions guide me blindly. I began to plan my next move, knowing that I had to confront her again, but this time with undeniable proof. Days passed, and I gathered more evidence. I used a combination of tracking her phone activity and speaking to a few parents from school who had unwittingly become my allies. They didn't know the full story, but I mentioned I was concerned about the principal and asked if they had noticed anything odd. To my surprise, several parents shared similar concerns about Mr. Thompson's behavior, not just with Melissa but with other mothers as well. I began to feel like I was uncovering a larger web of deceit, and the anger intensified. Finally, after a week of spying and gathering information, I felt ready to confront her again. I invited her to dinner, concocting a story about wanting to reconnect. I carefully planned the evening, making sure the kids were at a sleepover with friends. I wanted to create a calm atmosphere, but inside I was a storm. As she walked into the dining room, I noticed she looked radiant, as if she hadn't a care in the world. There was a sense of normalcy as we sat down to the dinner I had prepared, but tension hung in the air like a thick fog. I waited for the right moment, watching her enjoy the meal, laughing at my attempts to be charming, but inside I was simmering. "Melissa," I said, my voice steady but laced with an intensity she wasn't expecting. "I need to talk to you about something important." Her smile faded instantly. "What is it, Kevin?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "I know about you and Mr. Thompson." Her expression shifted from surprise to feigned shock, and she quickly shot back. "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous." I placed my phone on the table, the screen illuminated with the messages I had saved. "No, it's not ridiculous. It's right here in black and white." Her face paled as she read the messages, each word slicing through the pretense we had built. I watched her eyes widen and her mouth open slightly in disbelief. "Kevin, I can explain." She stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "Explain what?" "How you've been lying to me. How you've been flirting with him behind my back while pretending everything was fine at home." I felt the bitterness seep into my words. She squirmed, her earlier confidence crumbling. "It's not what you think. We were just having fun. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Fun? You think this is fun?" I retorted, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "You've betrayed me, Melissa. This isn't just a little harmless fun. This is infidelity." She tried to defend herself, weaving a convoluted web of excuses that only made matters worse. I was feeling neglected. You've been so focused on work and the kids, and I just wanted someone to pay attention to me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, you thought cheating was the solution. You thought throwing away everything we built was worth it for a few moments of attention from him. The conversation spiraled into chaos. She cried, I yelled, and the tension in the room was palpable, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle, trying to get through to her while she continued to dodge the truth. Her pleas for understanding fell on deaf ears. I felt shattered, yet strangely resolute. I understood that this wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about how I would choose to move forward from it. The pain was deep, but I also felt a growing strength within me. I knew then that I had to make a decision, not just for my own sanity, but for the sake of our children. The realization struck me. I could no longer live in a world where deceit and betrayal coexisted with love and trust. I needed to reclaim my life, and it was time to lay out my plan for revenge, not about vengeance, but about reclaiming my power and making her understand the gravity of her actions. After that explosive confrontation with Melissa, I felt like I had crossed a threshold I couldn't go back from. The veil of innocence was completely torn away, and all that was left was the raw, painful reality of our crumbling marriage. I spent the night packing the floor, thoughts racing through my mind like a movie reel stuck on fast forward. The kids were staying at their grandparents' that weekend, giving me a rare opportunity to think, plan, and figure out what I wanted to do next. I realized that this wasn't just about Melissa's betrayal. It was also about asserting myself and taking back control of my life. I had spent years prioritizing her needs, the kids, and the mundane grind of daily life. But now I had to put myself first. I needed to think clearly about how I would approach the next steps. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make her feel the same pain I was experiencing. But I also knew that revenge wouldn't solve anything. It would only prolong the agony and keep me tied to her in a way I didn't want any more. Instead, I needed a calculated plan, one that would expose her actions and make her realize the repercussions of her choices. I began by reaching out to a close friend, Nick, who had always been there for me through thick and thin. We met for drinks at our usual bar, and I laid everything out on the table. I'm not even sure where to start, I admitted, pouring out the details of what had unfolded. His expression shifted from concern to disbelief as he processed my story. Dude, that's brutal. I can't believe she would do that, especially with someone who is supposed to be a role model for your kids, he said, shaking his head. Have you thought about what you want to do? I mean, do you want to try to fix things, or are you done? I took a long sip of my beer, feeling the cold liquid settle in my stomach, momentarily dulling the ache in my heart. Honestly, I don't think I can ever look at her the same way again. There's this part of me that wants to believe we can work through it, but the trust is gone. It feels irrevocably broken. Nick leaned in closer, his voice low. If it were me, I'd get some proof of how far things went. You need to know if this was a one-time thing or if it's been going on for a while. Then you can make a decision. But whatever you do, don't let her manipulate you into feeling guilty. You deserve better. His words resonated. I realized that I couldn't just sit back and let this slide. I had to be proactive. I needed to dig deeper. Over the next few days, I devised a plan to gather more evidence that would substantiate what I suspected. I decided to start with surveillance, but not any clandestine operation. I could keep it simple and straightforward without crossing any ethical lines. I installed discreet tracking software on her phone, which I'd learned to do with a quick YouTube tutorial. The thought made my stomach churn, but I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. I wasn't proud of it, but desperation had a way of erasing lines I'd previously drawn in the sand. As days turned into a week, I kept a low profile while monitoring her movements and communications. She was oblivious, continuing her daily routine as if nothing had changed. I witnessed her texting Mr. Thompson during work hours, arranging casual meetups and discussing personal matters that made my skin crawl. They shared inside jokes, flirty messages, and plans that made it clear their connection was more than just professional. One evening, I decided to follow her. I knew it was risky, but the need for clarity was overwhelming. I wanted to see what was happening in real time rather than just reading about it through digital messages. That evening, I waited until she left for what she claimed was a late yoga class. Instead, I followed her to a small cafe nearby, one that was tucked away from the bustle of the main street. I parked my car a few blocks down and walked to the cafe, keeping my distance. My heart raced as I peered through the glass window, and what I saw made my blood boil. There she was, sitting across from Mr. Thompson, laughing and leaning in closer than I ever thought possible. For a moment, I felt frozen, watching the woman I loved engage in an intimacy I had assumed was reserved for our life together. They shared drinks, and I could see her head thrown back, her laughter echoing in the dimly lit space. The waiter brought over dessert, and as they shared a slice of cake, I felt my heart shatter all over again. In that moment, it became abundantly clear that this was more than just a fling. This was an affair that had been blossoming right under my nose. The anger that surged through me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I had always considered myself a patient man, but watching her with him ignited a fire I couldn't control. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and furious. I wanted to storm in there, confront her, expose him, and bring everything crashing down. But I held back. I knew that would only give her the chance to deny everything and manipulate the narrative in her favor. Instead, I took out my phone and discreetly snapped a few pictures, capturing them together in their moment of betrayal. These images would serve as irrefutable evidence of her infidelity. I even recorded snippets of their conversation using my phone's voice memo feature, careful to keep it hidden in my pocket. As I drove home, my mind was racing, filled with a storm of emotions. I felt empowered with my newfound proof, but I also felt a deep sadness. This was not the outcome I had hoped for when I married Melissa. I had wanted a happy family, a life filled with love and trust, but she had chosen to throw it all away for a few moments of excitement. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I had the upper hand. It was time to lay all my cards on the table, to finally let her know just how much her actions had hurt me. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I felt a sense of resolve settling in. I wasn't just going to sit back and let this happen. I would stand up for myself, demand the respect and truth I deserved, and find a way to move forward, even if it meant completely severing ties with the woman I once thought I knew so well. The following day would be the beginning of a new chapter, one where I reclaimed my dignity and made sure Melissa understood the consequences of her choices. The next day, I awoke with a mixture of dread and determination. It was time to confront Melissa again, this time with evidence that couldn't be brushed aside or manipulated. I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was no longer just the victim in this situation. I had taken control, and now I had the power to expose her betrayal. I spent the morning packing around the house, rehearsing what I wanted to say. I needed to remain calm, focused, and assertive. The last thing I wanted was for her to spin the narrative in her favor again. I had to stick to the facts, present the evidence, and make her understand that I wouldn't tolerate this betrayal. When she came home that evening, I could tell something was off. There was a nervous energy about her, almost like she could sense that I had something on my mind. As she began to prepare dinner, I knew there wouldn't be a better time to bring it up. I took a deep breath and called her into the living room. "Melissa, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions brewing inside me. She looked up, her smile fading as she sensed the seriousness in my tone. "What is it, Kevin? You're scaring me. Do you remember how I said I knew about you and Mr. Thompson?" I asked, watching her face closely for any hints of guilt. I wasn't just guessing. I have evidence this time. I held up my phone, ready to unleash the truth. Her expression shifted from surprise to panic, and she quickly shook her head. "Kevin, please, whatever you think you know, it's not what it seems. Not what it seems." I interrupted, pointing at the pictures I had snapped of her with Mr. Thompson. "You're sitting there in a cafe, looking cozy and flirtatious, sharing dessert. What do you mean it's not what it seems? This is exactly what it looks like. She stammered, her defenses crumbling. I can explain. We were just talking about school stuff and I was feeling overwhelmed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Stop lying, Melissa, I shouted, feeling the anger boil over. You've been sneaking around behind my back and now you want to say it's just talking. These messages don't lie. I pulled up the text messages I had saved on her phone and began reading them aloud, each word striking like a hammer against the glass walls of our reality. I watched as her face turned red, her eyes wide with fear and shame. Kevin, I know I've made mistakes, she pleaded, her voice trembling. But I love you, this was a stupid fling. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. I echoed, incredulous. You call this a fling? You're risking everything we built for a quick thrill. You've put our children at risk by cheating with the principal of their school. How can you say this doesn't mean anything? The weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air, and for a moment we both stood in silence, the reality of what had unfolded crashing down around us. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I wasn't ready to feel sorry for her. I had to stay strong. Why, Melissa? I finally asked, my voice softer but still firm. What led you to this? She broke down, her facade crumbling completely. I felt lonely, Kevin. You've been so focused on work and I felt like I was doing everything alone. It was stupid and I regret it more than anything. But please, let's work on this together. I'll do anything. It hurt to hear her words, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment of truth. I needed to make a decision about our future. Working on this together. It's not that simple anymore, I said, my heart heavy. You've shattered my trust and it's going to take more than words to fix this. I took a deep breath, trying to find my clarity amidst the chaos. I need to think about what I truly want. But admit it, this isn't just an accident. It's a reflection of deeper issues in our relationship. If you want to salvage anything, it's going to require transparency, accountability, and a willingness to do the hard work that's necessary. She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'll do it, I swear. I'll go to counseling, I'll be honest with you, just please don't throw everything away. In that moment, I felt torn. Part of me wanted to believe that we could rebuild from the ashes, but another part screamed that I couldn't afford to be naive. I had to protect myself, to ensure I wasn't stepping back into a cycle of pain. I'll give you time to think, I replied cautiously. But I need you to understand that I won't tolerate any more lies. You need to show me you're committed to making this right, not just for yourself but for our kids. We agreed to take some time apart to reflect on our relationship, to think about what it meant for us moving forward. I could see how desperate she was to save what we had, but I couldn't shake the lingering doubt. Could I ever fully trust her again? That night, I sat down and poured my heart out in a journal that I had neglected for years. I wrote about my fears, my heartbreak, and the complexities of love and betrayal. I wanted to understand my own emotions and find clarity in the chaos. As I penned my thoughts, I realized that I had to face the reality of our situation head-on and make a choice that was right for me. The next few days passed slowly, filled with moments of reflection. I weighed the pros and cons of staying together versus separating. I was acutely aware of our children, of what staying meant for them, and the impact my decisions would have on their lives. Ultimately, I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being as well. I didn't want to teach my kids that staying in a toxic environment was acceptable or that love meant enduring betrayal. It was a delicate balance, and I needed to choose carefully. As I walked through the hallways of my emotions, I realized that I could choose to forgive, but I had to consider if I could ever truly forget. I had a decision to make. Could I look her in the eyes every day knowing what I knew now? Or was it time to cut my losses and find a new path? The moment of truth was fast approaching, and I knew I had to prepare myself for a conversation that would ultimately reshape the trajectory of our lives. I wouldn't allow fear to dictate my decision. Instead, I would lean into the strength that had been forged through this painful experience. The next time I saw her, I would be ready to make my stand. I had a plan and I was going to follow through with it, no matter how painful it might be. The clock was ticking, and I knew the time for resolution was drawing near. As the days went by, I found myself lost in a sea of thoughts and emotions. Each moment felt heavy with the weight of uncertainty. I had given Melissa some space, and in that time I took a hard look at what I wanted. I didn't want this situation to define me, but it was becoming increasingly clear that it had already started to shape the way I viewed our marriage and, more importantly, myself. The night before I planned to confront her again, I couldn't sleep. I laid awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the memories we had shared. The laughter, the inside jokes, the quiet moments spent together, everything seemed tainted now. I clung to the hope that maybe we could salvage some semblance of what we had, yet I was forced to question whether it was worth it. I had decided to meet with a therapist the day before to discuss my feelings. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I needed guidance. The therapist listened as I spilled my heart out, detailing the betrayal, my emotional turmoil, and my fears for the future. It's important to prioritize your well-being in this situation, she advised. You need to think about what you truly want moving forward. Healing is a process, and it starts with you. Her words resonated deeply within me. It was a reminder that while I cared about Melissa, I couldn't neglect my own mental health in the process. The therapist suggested I make a list outlining my values and what I wanted in a partner: trust, loyalty, respect, the very foundations that had been shaken. By the end of the session, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. The next evening, I was ready. I sat Melissa down on the couch, the tension in the room palpable. We need to have a serious discussion about our future, I started, keeping my tone steady and deliberate. I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything that's happened and what I want moving forward. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. I know I messed up, Kevin. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I love you and I can't lose you. I appreciate that, I began, holding her gaze. But love isn't enough to rebuild what's been broken. I need to know that I can trust you again, and right now, I'm not sure if I can. I could see her disappointment, but I pressed on. I need to set some boundaries for our relationship moving forward. You need to understand that your actions have consequences, and I can't simply forgive and forget. We both need to work on this, and it may not be easy. Melissa nodded, her expression turning serious. I understand. I'm willing to go to counseling together to communicate more openly and to really work on our issues. I'll do anything, Kevin. Counseling is a start, I replied, my resolve firm. But I also need you to be transparent with me. I need to know about your interactions with Mr. Thompson and anyone else you might be in contact with. No more secrets. Her brow furrowed with a hint of frustration. But Kevin, I don't want to feel like I'm under constant surveillance. I need you to trust me. It's not about surveillance, I countered, holding my ground. It's about rebuilding trust. You've broken that trust, and it's going to take time to rebuild it. I need to know you're committed to mending this. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. I know I messed up, and I'm willing to prove myself. Just give me a chance to show you that I can change. As we talked, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was a path to healing, but it wouldn't be easy. I wanted to believe that with time and effort we could navigate this treacherous terrain together. But alongside that hope was the nagging doubt, the fear that I might be setting myself up for more heartbreak. Let's start by setting up counseling sessions, I said, trying to remain positive. And I want you to start keeping a journal about your feelings. I think it could help both of us understand what's going on in your mind. She nodded in agreement, and I felt a cautious optimism. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. We talked about our children, about the importance of keeping our household stable while we worked through our issues. They deserved the best of both of us, and I wanted to ensure that they didn't pay the price for our mistakes. As the weeks progressed, we began attending counseling together. The sessions were eye-opening, forcing us to confront not just the affair but the underlying issues that had led to it. We talked about communication, intimacy, and the emotional distance that had grown between us over the years. Each session was a mix of painful realizations and hopeful breakthroughs. But just as I felt we were making progress, I received an unexpected phone call that would send me spiraling back into doubt. It was Mrs. Harris, Lily's teacher. Kevin, I think you should know that I saw Melissa meeting with Mr. Thompson again, she said cautiously. They appeared to be very close. The blood drained from my face as her words sank in. What do you mean close? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. They were at a park, holding hands and laughing together, she said, her tone regretful. I didn't want to believe it, but I felt it was my responsibility to tell you. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks, shattering the fragile trust I had been trying to rebuild. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and everything I thought we were working toward seemed to come crashing down. I didn't know how to respond. Should I confront her immediately, or should I gather more information? I decided to confront her, but I needed to think strategically. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about ensuring that I made the right decision for myself and the kids. I needed to know the full extent of what was happening. That night, I waited for Melissa to get home from her session. As she walked through the door, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal rising within me. We need to talk, I said, my voice low and steady, but I could feel the tension seeping through. What is it? She asked, a hint of unease in her voice. I pulled out the messages from Mrs. Harris, my heart pounding as I laid them out before her. I was told that you were seen with Mr. Thompson again, and it wasn't just a casual meeting. Her face paled as she registered the gravity of what I was saying. Kevin, I can explain. I swear it was nothing. We ran into each other by accident. I was just trying to be friendly. Friendly? I shot back, my voice rising. How many times do I have to catch you lying before you realize how serious this is? You said you wanted to work on our marriage, and here you are throwing it all away for him again. I didn't mean for it to happen, she cried, tears streaming down her face. I thought we were making progress and I felt confused, but it was a mistake. Stop. I interrupted, my frustration boiling over. Enough with the excuses. You've had your chance to prove that you're committed to us, and you continue to betray my trust. I can't keep doing this. As we stood there, the silence weighed heavily between us, filled with unresolved tension and pain. I had thought we were on a path to recovery, but her continued deception made it clear that the road ahead was fraught with more obstacles than I had anticipated. In that moment, I knew I had to make a decision that would shape our future, and I couldn't let her tears or her pleas sway me this time. I had given her multiple chances to prove herself, but the truth was becoming all too clear. It was time to take a stand. I couldn't keep living in a cycle of betrayal and heartbreak, and I had to consider what was truly best for my children and myself. I had to reclaim my life and make the choice that would bring me peace, even if it meant saying goodbye to the woman I once loved. As the gravity of the situation settled into my bones, I knew that the final confrontation would be a turning point. I would have to lay everything out on the table and decide how to move forward, whether it meant starting anew or closing the chapter for good. The days following my confrontation with Melissa felt like a blur. I moved through life on autopilot, going through the motions of parenting, while my mind was consumed with thoughts about our marriage and the painful reality I had to face. I had reached a boiling point, and the emotional turmoil was taking its toll. I spent countless nights lying awake, wrestling with my feelings and the weight of decision-making. I knew I had to confront Melissa again, but this time it would be different. I felt a sense of clarity wash over me, a realization that I couldn't keep allowing myself to be manipulated or hurt. One evening, I called her into the living room, ready to lay down the law. I could see the concern etched on her face, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air. As she sat down, I took a deep breath and began, Melissa, we need to talk about what's next for us. I'm tired of walking on eggshells, and I need to be honest with you. Her expression shifted, nerves evident in her demeanor. What do you mean, Kevin? I thought we were working through things. We were, but I can't keep doing this if you continue to betray my trust. I received word that you met with Mr. Thompson again, and I'm done with the lies, I stated, my voice steady but filled with finality. Her eyes widened and I could see the panic set in. I swear, Kevin, it was nothing. I was just trying to be polite, to be friendly. You have to believe me. Belief isn't enough anymore, I replied, my tone resolute. You've been given chance after chance, and I can't keep forgiving you when you clearly haven't changed. Love isn't about repeated betrayals, it's about trust, respect, and loyalty. As I spoke, I could see her composure cracking. I understand that I've made mistakes, she said, her voice trembling. But I want to work on this, I really do. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I shook my head, holding back the tide of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. It's not enough to simply want to fix things, you have to show me you mean it. But more than that, I need to think about what's best for me and the kids. Her face fell, realization dawning on her. What are you saying? Are you saying you want a divorce? I let the silence linger for a moment, letting her absorb the weight of my words. I think it may be the best decision for both of us. I can't keep putting myself in a position to be hurt. Our marriage shouldn't be filled with doubt and suspicion. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to compose herself. Kevin, please don't do this. I can change. I'll do anything. I love you. I understand that you're saying all the right things now, but I need to protect myself and our children. I can't keep drowning in this pain, I said, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. I deserve a partner who's committed to being honest and faithful, and right now, I don't believe that's you. As the truth hung in the air, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. I had made my decision, and while it felt heart-wrenching, I also knew it was necessary for my own well-being. I couldn't keep holding on to something that was slipping through my fingers. We spent the next hour discussing the logistics of separation, how we would handle co-parenting, the children's living arrangements, and the financial aspects. It was surreal, sitting there and dismantling the life we had built together, but I felt a sense of liberation, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders with each word spoken. When the conversation finally came to an end, I felt drained. Melissa sat across from me, her face a mixture of despair and resignation. "I'll always love you, Kevin," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you." "I know you didn't want to hurt me," I replied, my voice steady. "But love isn't enough to sustain a relationship when trust has been broken. I hope you find happiness and healing, but I can't wait for that to happen while living in this turmoil." As I walked her to the door, I felt a profound sense of finality. We exchanged one last look, and I knew there would always be a part of me that cared for her, a part that would remember the good times we had shared. But I also understood that it was time to close that chapter and begin anew. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life for myself and the kids. I spent time with them, playing games, taking them to parks, and creating new memories. I enrolled in a support group for those navigating separation and divorce, where I found a community of people who understood the pain I was going through. It wasn't easy, but I learned to lean into my feelings and be honest with myself. I took the time to reflect on my values, what I wanted moving forward, and how to foster a positive environment for the kids. I realized that even amidst the pain of loss, there was an opportunity for growth and healing. As time passed, I began to feel a sense of peace settling in. I knew that while the journey ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, I was reclaiming my life on my own terms. I felt empowered to pursue happiness and prioritize my well-being, something I had neglected for far too long. One afternoon, while watching the kids play, I smiled. I felt a flicker of hope for the future, a future filled with potential, growth, and the possibility of love again. I reflected on the lessons learned throughout this painful experience, the importance of trust, communication, and ultimately valuing myself and my happiness. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I was determined not to let it define me. I was moving forward, ready to embrace whatever came next, with an open heart and a newfound strength. I knew I had the power to write my own story, one that didn't include betrayal but instead looked toward a brighter tomorrow.